if you could just start out by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are and how you got into the mural biz. We would love to hear it.
Okay, well, my name is Corrado Mallia. I'm in the Toronto area. I'm not in Toronto. I'm about half an hour north of Toronto, but Toronto's big and everybody just says Toronto. So I've been drawing like all my life. But in school, you always like, what are you going to do for a living, right? You know, there's always that starving artist thing, right? So I didn't know what to do. So in college, I took graphic design. And that was okay. I didn't really like it. So I just started practicing painting. I picked up an airbrush. The reason I picked up an airbrush is to learn to blend colors good. And so I just started painting everything. I started painting murals in my home. My parents would go on vacation. They would come back and be like dolphins on the wall, like that they did a surprise. They were very supportive. So I can't, I have to thank them for that. My parents encouraged me to paint the garage doors. So it was a Ferrari and a Lamborghini on one on each side. I didn't want to do it. It was my dad's idea, and he loved it. The neighborhood loved it. So that's it. And so how I got my first job as like looking for work, and I got practicing in my house enough in friends' homes. When it got to the point that okay, I'm fairly decent at this, I think I could start charging money. I did the cold calling because this was in the mid '90s. So we didn't have like the internet like now. So I just went cold calling, leaving flyers, and it was hard. It wasn't easy, but I walked into a theater one time. It was around when Jurassic Park, the second one, was coming out. And I just said, this is what I do. I'd like to, I can paint murals for you. And they didn't have anything from Universal. So the theater manager is like, okay, we don't have anything, but I'll talk to my boss and like, we'll see. I'm not sure. So I took a chance. It was a big chance, but I went home that night, bought like a canvas. I made a frame, just a 4x6 foot. I painted like 18 hours. I did the mural, and I just thinking, because they might not have bought it, right? They did. So I was lucky, and that was like my first official job. And then it just picked up from there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So your first official job, you wanted to get the job, so you went ahead and painted it, and then you pitched it to them. So you knew what the idea was?
There was no like, okay, we want this for sure. They said they like my work, but got to talk to the boss, and they ended up buying it. It wasn't anything huge or anything, but that was like my first, like from a non-family member or friend job. And I was in 97.
That's awesome. Oh my God.
Yep.
We just had a comment here. I want to read you. Corrado painted our hood liner on our Camaro, green flash. Awesome
yes.
work. Would recommend him to everyone. Oh, that's awesome. We have a couple comments on here. So people saying, oh my gosh, he's great. I'm like, okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Your work is really great. And I love how you pitched yourself, and like you did the cold calling, you went and you just did the job, because in the beginning you have to be so scrappy, right? And you definitely were. And would you say you're really scrappy like nowadays, now that you've built up your reputation? Or
well, honestly, in the beginning it was very tough. Like there was like a couple of years like I wasn't ever steady. I had to get part-time jobs, and now I'm booked like months in advance. I don't do any direct advertising, but like I said, I've been doing this 24 years now. So it's not an overnight thing. Some artists might get lucky, and that's great if you can, but like, I don't know. I had to like learn to paint a lot of things. There's some things I'm still learning to paint. I'm not great at, but I try to do jobs to my strength. Things I like painting big portraits, cars, those types of things.
Yeah, I love that too. And just to echo what you just said too, it's, after being in it so long, it does get so much easier. So for anybody watching and they're like, oh my gosh, he's so scrappy in the beginning, like you don't always have to be like that. It gets so much easier when it's like, once you get over like a hump. Did you, as you were going along, was it very slow growth, or did you just kind of find like a small hump one summer and you were busy?
Yeah, it's kind of like the best advertisement is your customers. Like if you do a good job, the customers, and another thing, like I find, like there's a lot of fantastic artists, but some of them, not all of them, some of them don't have a good attitude. And it's like the customer, you're painting into someone's home, right? So like you have to be nice, be polite, be clean, be friendly, and like, like you can be the best artist, but if somebody doesn't want you in the home, you're not going to get repeat business. So I've been lucky that a lot of my customers will refer me to their friends, or a lot of times they ask for some business cards. And that's how I get my work now. Like I don't do any direct advertising, but yeah, in the beginning, no, it was very hard. I'll tell you, I had to take a job. It was in collections, and it was I only did it for like a couple months. It's a long time ago, and I was terrible at it because like I'm too nice, and I felt bad for the people, but that was just how it was in the beginning until I picked up my business. Yeah, but it's an experience, right? So.
Yeah, and it makes you grateful for where you are now, you know, like not having to do those jobs that you don't necessarily like and that you aren't meant for. I love that you also said that you stick to the things that you really like to do and the things in your wheelhouse. So say someone wanted you to paint something that was completely outside of your wheelhouse. So like, do you refer that to someone or do you go ahead and try it or?
Yeah, sometimes like if I know it's like something that I don't like doing, something that I'm not best suited, and if I know another artist that's better at it, I will refer them. I got no problem with that. It's like you're not going to do every job that comes by you. Like I'm not afraid of the challenge, but certain things like if I feel I can't do it justice, I tell them, I said, rather this person will do it. They do it really good and they specialize that. I got no problem doing that. So.
Yeah. So, what is your specialty? Like flowers and rainbows, or
glitter?
Or?
No, I'm not. You know what? I hated that at first, and now I kind of like him. And I'm not great at it. I'm trying to do better at it because I've seen it done. Like you do that stuff really good, and I've seen a lot of people do it good. And actually, I got one coming up next week, and it's like that. And I'm actually looking forward to it because maybe just my mind has changed. Getting older, but I want to do a good job at it. So yeah, but scenery is not my strong point. I'm always trying to improve that. Another thing I'm not great at is fire, like the realistic fire that the airbrush guys do. I just can't get it right. And if somebody only wants that, I will just say it's not my specialty. Like I think, and a lot of times I think they appreciate it because if I know I'm not going to do as good as another person, they appreciate this. Say thanks for your honesty. I've had that a few times, so I'm always up for a challenge, but at the end of the day, the customer has to get the best job possible. So
true. Yeah. If they're going to pay, you know, their hard earned money too for something, they want it to be, you know, at the best it can be. And you're the professional, so they're coming to you. So how do you meet these other artists that you refer to? And also if you refer stuff to them, do you get referrals from other artists too, or?
No, there's no like official or anything. There's like, it's mostly like, because I've been doing this for a while, there was a forum called airbrush.com. I don't think it's around anymore, but a lot of those people I still talk, like Jody Barillo, he's really great. You should interview him too.
Okay.
There's a lot of people I know from there. So Patrick Ganino, he's not an airbrush artist, but he's in Connecticut. He does there's a lot. I could go on talking forever, but yeah, I'll send them their email or something. Yeah, so there's no like, I don't ask for a referral fee. I personally don't like that. Some people may do that. I don't. Like, if I know somebody that's going to do a good job, I will happily refer somebody to them. I don't ever want a kickback. So. Yeah.
And if you do good and put good out, you'll eventually get it back in some way. Maybe not like a tally mark of like, I did this for you, you did this for me, but I really think that if you're fair and you give back and you're a good person, like things just kind of come back, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. So how did you learn to paint? Was it all just trial and error? Did you take a couple YouTube classes? Like, how did you learn?
Like, I'm still learning. Trust me, I'm still learning. Like I said, with the airbrush, I first got it. My parents got me when I was 15. I didn't know what I was doing. There wasn't no like YouTube around. And I couldn't figure it out. I put it aside for a couple of years until then I just learned, okay, I got to just pick this up, and then it's a tool. And for some reason in the beginning, I don't know why, for a few years, I thought everything had to be done with an airbrush. I don't know why I had this mentality. And airbrush is great for certain things, but you know that some things it's like sometimes better just pick up a brush, you get a solid line, and then you overspray. One time I was just learning in my parents' basement. I did a beach wall, all with an airbrush. I didn't have any spray guns. I didn't know about masking or putting plastic up to protect. And not to like, yeah, the whole basement was covered in a fine blue dust. And my mother and my grandma was clean. I felt so bad, but that's how I learned and I always say this today, never underestimate how far overspray goes. Put plastic, it travels, right? So Now I use about half and half. If it's a solid color, just roll it on. You don't have to spray it. If it's outside, okay, you can. But then you're outside, you have to worry about if there's cars underneath. When it's windy, droplets will go everywhere. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is such a crucial lesson that everybody has to learn. I'm so glad you mentioned that too. I'm so interested in airbrush because I've used very little of it, mostly because of the overspray.
Yeah.
And just a lot of my projects are indoors. And so when I am outdoors, I don't even think to use spray paint, or airbrush or any kind of thing, but I wish I would do it more. So would you have some tips for maybe what kind of products to use on that? And like, give me an example of somewhere that you would use an airbrush and an area where you would definitely not.
Okay, so for one thing, when it's indoors, obviously I use as little as I can. When it's just an airbrush, that's not so bad because the overspray is little. Like if I'm inside in somebody's home that's finished, of course I cover everything up, but I don't want to get my big spray guns out because that's going to make more overspray. So a lot of times I'll roll the background and then I'll airbrush details or fades on top. Like I said, it's just use the best. Like Drew Blair, he's probably the best airbrush artist in the world. Even him, not everything he does is with an airbrush. He'll use scalpels for like hairs on people's face. So just use the best tool for the job, I find.
Okay. Is there a brand of paint that you use?
So when I'm airbrushing, I like it's line Createx, and they have a line Wicked because it's made by Createx. It's American paint. It's light fast, which means it doesn't fade. It's very durable. It's acrylic, so it's non-toxic. You still got to wear a mask. For larger stuff, I like Nova Color is amazing. I took a class by John Pugh. He's an
I've met him.
He is amazing. He's the one who told me about Nova Paint. If it's good enough for him, it's for sure good enough for me. So, so I'm in Canada, so I have to order it, and then I would go to Buffalo and pick it up, but I can't do that because of the pandemic. So, but I have a lot. That stuff is the best. Like house paint is okay. Like Bear is actually pretty good. People slam Bear, but its coverage is pretty good. But the Nova Color, the pigment, it's like pure pigment. It's the best. Yeah, and you can spray it if you thin it, but yeah, you can. But in an airbrush, it's, if you have a bigger nozzle, it's better. But the spray gun, it sprays really nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So many airbrushing tips. Okay. Let's see. I just had a question and then it left me. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So you took a class with John Pugh. Okay. Have you taken other classes from other muralists and whatnot?
Let me think. This was like, that was a Mural Roots. It's a Toronto mural painting group, and it wasn't a class. It was like a little, I think it was a couple hours. Him and Bill Wrigley. For the most of it, I would have to be self-taught, like Airbrush Magazine. Now there's a lot of tricks online. Some people pick it up really fast. I didn't. I think it's a skill that some people maybe are born with, or you can learn it, but I don't know. It's like, for the most part, I'm self-taught. When I was young, I took classes, like drawing classes and stuff, and for some reason, they kept on making us draw like still life, like gourds and stuff and fruit. I hated it. I know it was good practice, but I didn't like it, but it was good practice. So anything you learn is it's going to help it, at least to some extent. So.
Yeah, definitely. Would you say you are very comfortable with an airbrush right now, or how long did that take to get there?
A few years to be comfortable with it. I'm not the best at it, but I still I use it about half and half now. It used to be 100%, and like I said, for I don't think it's the best tool for everything. So, but I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
And I prefer freehand, but. There's a stigma about airbrushing. Like people say, 100% freehand. That's great, but if you need to pick up a handheld stencil for a shield, there's nothing wrong with that. Just do it. If you need to pick up a paintbrush, make things easier for yourself. It's about the end result. I find that's just my view.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah, I have so many overspray stories.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, I remember I was doing a cabinet area in a store inside, and I just did a bunch of spray. I put drop cloth down that it was probably about 5 feet out,
Yeah.
and I didn't put drop cloth underneath the
Yeah.
cabinet. I just put it right up next to it, thinking it would fall, and I pulled the drop cloth away. It was 5 feet of drop cloth, and there was a line around everything. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
looked underneath the cabinet, and there was just a little dusting of all this rainbow colors underneath. I was like, no. And so, yeah, everything smelled like paint thinner after
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Have you had
yeah.
something similar happen?
Yeah, well, like that's the reason why. Yeah, like I was trying to think.
Okay.
I never had a real horror story because I'm very, especially when you're in someone's home, you have to protect everything. But yeah, it go in like the dust. It's not just like, okay, if I'm spraying, I don't cover the actual paint, but it falls as dust. So it can be swept, but you still don't want dust going in the and everything. Where like at the end of the day, you'll have like blue dust, even though you wear a mask, a little bit still creeps. So yeah.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I remember working on a store, and there was somebody spraying. I'd say she was 15 feet away from me, and she was doing a wall, and I was just around, and I blew my nose at the end of the day, and I had blue because she was doing
Yeah.
underwater skiing. I had blue that I blew out of my nose, and I was like, what? I wasn't even near her really, but
Yeah.
it's crazy how far it goes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it goes in the air and in your lungs. It's not good. Like even though it's water based, it's not good, right? So
Yeah. Okay. So you're getting a lot of your commissions from word of mouth now. I'm just going to echo that again for everybody who is, wanting to be a muralist, thinking about it. And the idea of starting is super, super hard, but it gets easier. And now you get recommended. How do you price your murals, if you don't mind me asking? We love to talk about money. We love to talk about hourly rates or square foot and what you're making. I think it's really motivational for other artists who want to leave their job, and anybody has like a steady income, they're like, can I really be an artist? Can I make decent money as an artist? What do you make? Like, just let me know.
yeah, well, like I'll be honest, pricing is still my hardest thing. Like the painting, I love it. And it's every job is different. So I go generally by square foot, but
Okay.
it still depends. So it can range from and that's another thing. When you go bigger, the price usually goes down per square foot, just because the details
Okay.
less tight. Like I can do like a 10 by 10 foot wall if I have a scissor lift. Let's say if it's a portrait, could take me sometimes it could take me less as if it's a small canvas. So right, like I did a Mike Tyson and Rocky mural all with like a SATA mini jet. It's just a small spray gun, all with that, and it was pretty quick. So it can go $10 a square foot to $30, but even then, it's a ballpark because you got to think if the wall's to be primed, if it's outside, you have to deal with the weather. If you got to get a lift involved, there's so many factors. The level of detail, so it's hard. It's never. And I find that if I price right, I try not to ever price on the spot because I'll always get it wrong. I'll either go, I usually go too low, or you can go too high. But yeah, I hate it. It's the worst part of my job, but it's necessary. You have to figure these things out. I don't ever price by hour. I see a lot of people do this, and if that works for them, that's great. But for me, I find it's not, because sometimes things will take longer, and I want to give quality, not I'd rather do 10 great murals a year than 100 mediocre ones. And if it takes me a little longer, I'll take that time. Or sometimes the airbrush will clog up, so you don't want to. You could spend 10 minutes, taking it apart, and the customer is there watching. Okay, I'm paying by the hour. Am I paying for this? So I just don't. I don't ever price by hour. I don't. Do you ever price by hour?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah.
Just because the whole square feet thing is so, but I don't tell them, like, in my head, when they're like, hey, I want this, I will add it up how many hours I think it'll take in my head, and I'll just give them a price. And
Yeah.
but I don't actually tell them what I make per hour. That way
Yeah.
they're not like, or I'll just give them like a day rate or a half day rate or a week rate or something like that. But it's funny as you're talking, because that's exactly what I tell people too. If they want a square foot rate, I'll be like, it could be between 10 and 30. I don't know. I
Yeah.
say exactly what you say. So it's
Yeah.
so funny how we're all just kind of like, it depends. But yeah, between 10 and 30 is also just a ballpark. And 30, yeah, I like that you mentioned when it gets larger, it gets less per square foot, because I had never actually really thought about doing it like that, because this for the whole square foot thing, you know, $30 a square foot can add up so fast. If
Yeah.
someone has a 10 by 10 wall, I mean, what is that, 3,000, something like that? Like
Yeah.
it gets
3,000.
it adds up so quickly. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not set. It's not like I don't ever say, okay, this wall is. I don't say it's like, oh, it's exactly this because of the square footage. It's just it's more for me, and it helps me figure out. Also, like, okay, travel time. Like, is this place 10 minutes away? Is it 2 hours away? You have to like take just so many things you have to keep in mind. And the daily rate is a pretty good too. But even that, it's like you have to figure out. It's different in every area. The materials you use. Like just, it's hard. Like I said, you're probably better at it than me. I've listened to all your podcasts, and you're really good at the pricing. So you got it down good. So
Oh, thanks. But it's good to chat with other artists just to see how you're doing it, because there's so many ways to go about this. And so I guess this is just a good lesson for anybody listening to say there's no right or wrong way. It's just kind of your way and whatever you think is fair. Do you give them just one lumped price, or do you give them like a breakdown of supplies and everything?
No, I never do that. So my price is always going to include that. I don't want to like nickel and dime people on like, oh, I got to use 2 rolls of tape, so I got to charge next for. Like as a customer, I don't want to be nickel and dime. So it's a all in one price. Now, if the design changes drastically, where it's like, let's say I'm painting, 2 figures and then they want 5 figures, you got to change the price. Obviously, that's going to change the price for sure. But what was the question? A lump. I'll usually give a range.
Oh, that's safe. I like that.
And to be honest, as most people, when you say they'll usually want the lower range, I probably do that in my head too. So maybe pump up your high range because sometimes people can add stuff that they see where you're working. Like you could be in a house and you're painting one wall, and it's like, okay, that's great. Can you do my other kid's wall? So I don't know.
I really love the range thing. That's what I've started doing here recently. I have this whole script in my head. Basically, like when someone's like, what are your prices? I don't even know. And I don't even, I just had a call with a guy yesterday. He was wanting a big mural in a school. I didn't know what big meant, but I was like, okay, murals usually start at maybe, I don't know, 700, and then you can go up to 10,000, but my usual median is about 2 or 3. And so he chose, he was like, okay, let's do about 2 or 3. And I was like, okay, great. So, and I usually tell people I can create like a design to fit, but that is like exactly what I said. That's been my new pitch here for the last month. And that really has helped and a $10,000 mural for me is pretty rare. Like it's maybe a few times a year or so, but just to say like, hey, it can go up this high and we can do that if you have the budget for it, because then it opens it up for them,
Yeah. Somebody told me, and I got to always remember this, is never think with your own wallet.
Oh, so true.
Right? Like, I got to repeat it to myself because I still do it. Like, 10,000, like I've done those, but they're not too often. And 10,000 to me or you could be like,
a lot.
It's nothing to someone. Yeah, it's a lot for me too, but for someone else, it's nothing. Right? And I'll tell you something. The higher end customers, it's almost like they want to spend more. It's like have you ever heard that thing? But with the wine, they did a study with the 2 bottles of the same exact bottle of wine. They gave one. This is a $5 glass of wine, and this is a $100 glass. And it was the same glass, and everybody says, "Oh, the $100 glass is much better. It's much richer." It is just perception, right? So now I'm not saying overcharge people. Like, be fair, but like undercharging is not good either, because the perceived value is like, oh, this mural is like $500. It's like I have like a $3 million home. Like I want something nice for it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
so true. I'm so glad you said that too. It's just, that's also something that I struggle with a lot. I grew up with not very much money. It's really good for me because my husband grew up with, like he was very comfortable. And so two different worlds kind of a thing. And so anytime I'm talking about pricing, like I was pricing for an engineering firm doing a mural for them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is going to end up being 10,000. And he looked at me, he's like, that is nothing to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't even imagine that. So yeah, you're totally right. Just
Yeah.
don't, what did you say? Don't price with your own wallet.
Yeah, when you're pricing, don't go by your wallet. And okay, so my wife used to work, she used to manage a high-end kitchens, like a kitchen store. I don't want to say, but anyway, they would sell like $5,000 coffee makers and $10,000. There was like a stove that was like 70 grand. And sometimes I would say the price, and she's like, that's way too low. And she's my best business person because she still telling me these things. Like, it's the hardest part for me. And it's like mural painting I love it. It's a lot of work. And most people never realize and because I airbrush, there's probably more equipment. Like there's the compressor, all my stuff. So it's like a whole carload of stuff, the ladder, compressor. And I think only when I get to the house and they see me unloading all, then they realize, okay, there's a lot of work and they appreciate it. But I don't think they know until I'm not just walking in with a paintbrush and a little can of paint and right? So you have to charge according for it.
Oh, so true. And I often forget about that too until people point that out, the supplies that are needed. Like I use a projector and it's a nice one. And then I just bought a scaffolding like 6 months ago to help on stuff. And we were actually doing home projects here and someone asked like, hey, did you rent this? I'm like, actually, no, I own it. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was a business expense. And just, with the air compressors, with the paint, the brushes, like there's so many expenses. I just did my taxes a couple months ago and just to write out all of the expenses needed, even website fees, all of that stuff, I was just like, it's crazy. There's a lot to go into it.
Yeah, but it's necessary. It's like you invest in good supplies and good paint and like you're going to use it. You can write it off. So you have to don't use cheap paint, especially outside. Like you have to use light, fast paint. Like yellows and reds are the worst. But use good paint. Use exterior paint. Nova is really great for that. So I don't get sponsored by them. I wish I did, but that stuff is really good. So. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we should contact Nova in some way and do a giveaway or something. These are all natural recommendations for anybody listening. We're not getting paid to say this, but we should. It's all good. I keep thinking about your wine comparison too, of just pricing in that way, of just people think that they're getting a better deal with it. And it's funny because I remember in the beginning I would price things at a few $100s, or $100 or $200 or $300, and I would make that in a day. And people were like, I would still get so many people that would say, no, like that's too expensive for me. And nowadays it's more in the $700 a day range. But I'm rarely getting people saying that that's too expensive for me. It's just funny how, when you put out your pricing of smaller amounts, you attract those people who can afford that or people who can barely afford that. But when you're putting out, bigger products and at a bigger price tag, you attract those people who can afford that or are saving up to afford that in that area. It's blowing my mind here recently how I'm not getting those little bitty customers anymore. They're getting bigger every single year. Is that what have you experienced that?
Yeah. What was I going to say? Murals are a luxury. It's like nobody needs a mural. Okay, I want a Lamborghini. I can't afford a Lamborghini. It's a luxury, right? So if somebody some people don't, and I understand that the average person has no idea how much it costs, right? Some people might expect, $200, but for $200 is not worth for me to lug all my stuff and do a job, and it's not worth it, right? Like I said, the day rate, it's not. If it's something I'm painting in my studio, I can whip it off quick. That's one thing, but a $200 is almost you have to have a minimum, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that because a lot of artists. I get this question a lot too. And whenever you're first starting out, right, you take everything, right? I recommend that to everybody. To take everything, anything you can get, anything you can make money with a paintbrush. And then as you grow a little bit more, you set a minimum. What were your minimums that you've grown throughout the year?
I don't know, like I don't like the minimum, like probably about $400 a day is minimum. I don't, like I said, I don't necessarily have like, oh, it's going to be that, but that's probably about what it works out to. But it can go more, like I said, trying to think. Sorry, I'm blanking out here.
No, you're good. Yeah, I remember when I started getting busier, like after I was finally at the point of saying no to certain things like pet portraits. I really don't like doing pet portraits.
Yeah.
I finally said no to that. And even just friends too, they were like, hey, can you do this? Finally, I started saying, okay, no, $200 is my absolute minimum. I'm not gonna leave my house, get prepared, do a sketch for you, do all the stuff to make less than $200. I'm just not doing it. And then now it's 500. That's what. And now I was even thinking of raising it to 700 maybe next year. I don't know, because it's just crazy busy right now. But that was kind of my progression as we've gone along. When would you say that say somebody's listening and they're like, I want to set a minimum one day. How do I know when the right time is?
Well, okay, if you're getting steady work, okay, what's the saying? If you get every job that you bid on, you're charging too little.
Ooh, I like that.
I didn't invent that. I heard that, and I think it's totally true. You're not going to get unless you're charging too low, you're not going to get every job, and be okay with that. Like, yeah, okay, it takes time, but like, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. It's hard to think of questions on the spot. So you're
good.
Yeah.
No, like, so the minimum a day. Yeah. Like I can't say for anyone else because it depends on your economic area, but like, if you're getting steady jobs and you're like up your minimum, you got to think of minimum wage. Like we're an artist, like, if you're doing this for a living, you have to have a decent amount of skill. People want your work. So charge for it. Like, don't think of like I see a lot of there's the mural thing on Facebook. It's really great, but a lot of the beginners have an attitude. It's like, oh, I'm lucky to do this, and the customers sometimes know this. It's like innate, and they think they're doing you a favor, but like, you're doing work. Like, yeah, it's great to build your portfolio, but I almost figure, like, unless you're doing it for charity that you want to do, it's almost better to do work in your own home or family or friends to build your portfolio. Because if you're doing this work in the beginning to get your name out there, but you're charging, let's say, $500 for like 2 weeks worth of work, what's that customer going to say? Oh, this is great. How much did you pay? $500. Now you're that $500 artist. Like, you don't want that. It's bad for business, right?
So true.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah. And there is kind of like a weird happy medium too in the beginning of taking everything. And then also I've seen a couple artists, not many, but some, where in the beginning they're like, I will not work for less than $40 an hour. And I'm a beginner artist. I'm like, like maybe. So there is like a weird middle point of, demanding too much or, knowing your worth and not working for pennies.
Yeah, it is a fine line, because if you charge so much that you're not getting work, or that everybody said, like, a lot of times people say charge more, but like at the same time, there's going to be a line where the customer is not willing to pay. There's a certain market value, so that's always a fine line to walk. Don't want to charge too little, and you don't want to charge too much. If you're steady work, that's where you want to be, in the happy medium. So.
Yeah, everything is just a weird happy medium balance. Yeah. I have a question for you. I was just thinking of Amanda. She's in the Artist Academy Advanced, and lately she asked a question because she just bid a project for a restaurant, and I remember her posting in there, and she said that she gave them a pretty good rate, and then whenever they were talking to her about what they wanted, it ended up being way more than what she thought, like more work. So I'd say she told them it was going to be $1,000, and they were talking to her, and like she realized, oh wow, this is going to take me a really long time. So she posted in there asking what she should do, and then maybe ways of cutting corners or whatnot. Like, so what would be the advice that you would give to Amanda?
Well, so like if she negotiated so let's say she thought it was $1,000 for one wall, and then they say, oh, it's 3 walls. Like, you just have to be honest and tell them, like, be firm. Like we artists are I suffer them this big time. We're too nice sometimes. You just have to be polite with them, obviously, but just explain, like, if a restaurant is buying one stove and they get one price for it, and then they want, we want 3 stoves. Obviously, the stove company is going to charge them for 3 stoves. So she has to do the same thing. Like,
So
don't
true.
talk, right?
In her circumstance, though, I totally get where you're coming from. It wasn't more than one wall. It was just a really detailed design. So it was
Yeah.
going to take her like double, triple the time.
Yeah.
Would you still say that, or maybe explain to them, or what would you say?
Okay, so is it like, did they change the design, or is it like she just
Yeah.
realized, okay, so, well, if they
I
change the
think so.
design, yeah. If they change the design, she just has to be honest, like, say, like, I mean, a mural can take a day, it can take a week, it can take a month, depending. She just has to explain that to them. Most people are understanding. Like, and if they're not understanding, you don't want to work with them. Like, most of my customers are actually really good. And I kind of like, I think people on average are reasonable. If you just explain it to them, like, be professional, and you just tell them, like, this job, it's not a 2-day job. It's going to take 3 weeks or whatever. They'll probably understand, or they'll work something out. I don't know if she's just starting out, but like, okay, maybe you're starting to give a little lower price, but you still have to charge for your work appropriately. So.
Yeah, so true. I have a story. I actually just ran into this with doing a window painting. So window paintings for me are like a half a day project. Like, they pay like a couple $100. I go out there for a few hours and knock out a window painting. I usually don't even do a contract with it. It's just so fast and easy, and people usually love it. I went out there to this bar downtown and did a window painting for them. And like, I gave them a price of 4 windows for $350. And so when I got out there, they were like, okay, we're going to do all of our windows, which is basically double. And I made the mistake of not saying, okay, well, that's going to be more. I assumed that they knew, because I've had many customers before say, like, at the end of it, I was like, okay, it's, I did this and this, so it'll be this much, it'll be more. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, they get it. I made the mistake of not saying it. So at the end of it, I was like, hey, like, I basically did over double of what you asked for, but if you could just pay like a couple $100 more, or like, actually I asked for $150 more instead of $350. I asked for $150 to make it even $500. And they were like, no, absolutely not. I was like, well, I mean, I did double of what you asked, what the price was. And they were like, no, I'm not paying this. So, and I was just like, what? And then so we went back and forth, and I was just like, okay, like, we'll just do this amount. So I took it off, and then I put it on there that they're like, that they didn't want to pay for it, for the extra work. And they're like, you're being catty. We're not going to pay. Well, and I was like, okay, like, and I was like, I'm gonna take you to court if you don't pay. And this is the first time I actually have to do it, because they're refusing to pay for any of it. They're saying that I didn't complete it because they didn't like that I wanted more, and so they're like, well, we don't think it's done at all. We want more. They wanted me to come back and do even more. It's just a whole thing. First and only time I've ever had to do this, and everybody else is so great. It's just learn from my mistake.
Yeah, you'll learn from these mistakes. Like, I used to paint a bunch of restaurants, big diners. I won't say the name. Most of them are gone now. And I was friends with this guy. Painted, I think, about 6 of them. So lots of decent money, like a lot of work on one of them. Because I was friends with them, I didn't get any payment. In the end, I ended up doing about 2 months of work, and I still to this day have not gotten paid for it. I don't even know where the guy is anymore, but it's like, you just learn. And this is why I always say, get a deposit, get progress payments, because I've done it myself. So I speak from experience. So
yeah.
Wait,
you didn't get paid at all? Did you not want to?
No, I got maybe half of it, but it was a few thousand, like several $1,000s I was out, and I've never gotten it. I even tried sending like lawyer letters, and this was a long time ago, and I won't do that again, but you'll learn. So for now, like, if you're painting windows, you're going to say it's 3 windows, and that's what it is, and they want more, that's fine. But just, okay, I'm painting 6 now. I got to charge double, whatever. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Anytime anybody asks me, I'm gonna be like, nope. Okay, this is, you want more? Okay, this is what it is. It's funny though, because like sometimes you're just like in the moment and you're there like,
yeah,
okay, this and then do this. And I'm like, okay, like just be
yeah.
happy, like pleasing. And then at the end, it's like, okay. And then they're like, no. It's like, oh, fine. Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
But like 99% of the time, customers are so great, and
Yeah.
people appreciate you and they want to, they appreciate the work that we do and they want to pay and, what's fair. But then there's always this like bad apple. But it's like,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I find, like I said, most customers, like the customers that are hiring us, they appreciate art and they're honestly almost really good. So, but you're going to get these stories that they're going to have. It happens in every business. Just the thing is, just don't forget it and don't let it happen again. It's that I'll always remember that story of that place that I never got that money. So this is why, like on the forums, I always say, get money up front, because I did it myself. So.
Yeah, that is a thing too. Yeah, businesses just closing, like, or if someone's starting a business and they file bankruptcy or something, like we're not getting paid. So taking a deposit, that's also an amazing
Another
idea.
thing that sorry,
Yeah, go for it.
one thing I have to see, this is like 15 years ago, a restaurant was hiring me, and they had these really amazing drawings, like this is from another muralist, and they gave me this. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, where do these come from? Like, why aren't you hiring this person? These drawings are like better than anything I can do, especially in those days. So I didn't end up using them because I felt weird. But I've always wondered what happened to, like, so that's another thing with the designs, like I don't charge a design fee, but it's part of I won't design until I get a deposit. And the point is that, because it does happen where you can do a design for someone and they haven't even paid you, and then maybe they'll shop around for someone cheaper, another artist, and then now they're using your design, and you're not even getting paid for it. So, also, don't design don't do any work without getting a deposit or something.
So
and most
true.
customers are fine if they don't want to give you a deposit. Like that's a red flag right there. So.
Oh, true. Yeah, so true. So I know that some people won't even put customers on their calendar unless they do a deposit. And I usually do that. If I know I'm going to have to do a bunch of designing, I'm like, okay, no, at least pay something. What is your deposit amount? Like, how much do you have people to put a deposit?
It's usually usually about $400 or $500, unless it's a big thing that then I'll do. It could be like 30% of the job or something, and for me it's not an extra fee, but it's included in the cost and it's a non-refundable. But like honestly, in over 20 years, once I've never had a job like cancel. Like once they've gone to the design and they've done the deposit, it always goes through. So I've never had to worry. Yeah. It would be non-refundable anyways because I could spend a day, 2-3 days designing. So that's the work it's done. So.
Do you explain to them the rules and everything before they do the deposit that it is non-refundable and it goes towards their end payment? Yeah,
it's usually not even a very detailed. I'll just I'll talk. First, how I usually do it. They'll either email me or call me, and on the phone, and they'll ask you a ballpark price, and I'll give them a very basic range because I don't know what's involved, and that usually sometimes people have no clue. They might think, it's $200 and it's not that's not for them. Or if they're I go see the house. I'll take measurements, discuss what they want. And once I get to the point where I'm going to the house, it's like about 90% I'm going to get the job. And then that's when I say, I need a deposit. I'll do a design. Give me a couple of weeks or whatever for the design. And they get to approve it. I do it by email. And they can change stuff if they want within reason. And they don't charge extra for redesigning unless it gets to the extreme. But I don't have a contract where it's like, it's not a very labeled contract where this is non-refundable, but they know it's a non-refundable. I say it's like non-refundable. So.
Okay, I gotcha. Awesome. Well, we basically talked about all of the things now: deposits, down or contract a little bit, and just all the things with payments and pricing and square foot and all the stuff. So I think that's all I have. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank you.
and chatting. And this kind of turned into a whole like money talk with how to collect and all the things. Also, actually, I have a couple more questions. How do you collect money? What do you use? Venmo, check, what?
Check, e-transfer, if it's a U.S. customer, PayPal, cash, whatever. I'm not set up for credit card. I probably should, but I haven't really. Check is probably the most, and knock on wood, never had anyone bounce. Haven't had a check bounce on me yet. So.
Oh yeah, same. Yeah,
Yeah.
checks are the best. Yeah, no fees, just anything like that. Okay, awesome. Well, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on this very last minute interview. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to have you on for May Mural Month.
Thanks, Andrea.
Awesome. I will talk to you later. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.